Okay, picture this. You're sitting right in the middle of a tense corporate boardroom. The executives around the table are just exhausted. They're suffering from what we can really only describe as ERP trauma after surviving totally botched, dragged out software rollouts in the past. So they're defensive, they're highly skeptical. The COO crosses his arms, looks intensely at the implementation consultant sitting across from him, and bluntly asks, "How long is this actually going to take?" Now, normally a consultant's going to hedge, right? They'll give some safe, cautious, corporate non-answer. But this systems architect responds completely differently. He just looks right back at the COO and asks, "Do you want to preserve inefficiency or eliminate it?" Boom. The entire room just goes dead silent. Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're unpacking the ERP paradigm shift, agility versus stagnation. We're going to completely unravel this massive false narrative in the business world, the idea that implementing software is just an IT project. As we'll see, treating an ERP rollout purely as a tech checkbox is exactly why so many of them fail. And we'll explore how shifting your mindset completely transforms not just your project timeline, but literally your company's entire future. Okay, let's dive into this. Forget all the traditional technical jargon you've been fed. An ERP implementation is, at its core, a behavior change project disguised as software. This is the absolute hard truth we have to accept right out of the gate. It's not about writing code. Actually, scratch that. It's not really about the technology at all. It's about human beings. It's about taking a company that currently operates as this disjointed collection of siloed departments and forcing them to act as a single, unified business. And as anyone who has managed people knows, human behavior is a whole lot harder to configure than software. Let's look at a pretty classic scenario. Imagine a rapidly growing company. We'll call them Atlas Sporting Goods. They've grown way too fast. Their sales data is living in chaotic, bloated spreadsheets. Tracking inventory is essentially just a wild guess, and everyone blames everyone else when things inevitably go wrong. The CEO is desperate for a quick fix, so he leans back in his chair and says, 6 months. That's how long NetSuite takes, right? See, he's completely bought into the myth of the plug-and-play fix. He expects the software to just magically heal all of his organizational chaos. But Maya, his implementation consultant, she knows better. She knows that the timeline depends entirely on whether they want software simply installed or a business transformed. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how Maya breaks down the reality for the Atlas executive team. She walks right up to the whiteboard and draws these 3 distinct timelines. You've got the 3 to 6 month fantasy, the 9 to 15 month realistic scenario, and the 2+ year disaster. The absolute key takeaway here is that each of these paths isn't determined by the software's capabilities at all. It's determined by the company's internal discipline. Let's break down exactly what pushes an organization out of a fantasy sprint and into a realistic slog, or worse, a complete operational disaster. So in the 3 to 6 month fantasy timeline, which by the way is exactly what you hear in those slick sales pitches, everything is perfect. Requirements are totally clear from day one, processes are perfectly standardized, the data, sparkling clean. Leadership makes rapid-fire decisions, nobody ever changes their mind, and my absolute personal favorite, employees embrace the new system immediately and with a giant smile. Look, sure, if you're a tiny startup with basically zero complex operations, a 90-day launch might be possible. But for a growing, complex mid-market company with years of legacy baggage, expecting this level of instant harmony is frankly just absurd. Let's step into the realistic timeline of 9 to 15 months, where you inevitably crash into what we call icebergs. What you see on the surface is just a tiny fraction of the massive danger lurking underneath. First, a couple of months just vanish into discovery. Figuring out which bad organizational habits to keep and which to toss. Then you hit the configuration icebergs, complex financials, super intricate pricing rules, warehouse permissions. Next, you crash head-on into the integration icebergs, trying to tie the new ERP into Shopify, your shipping carriers, EDI partners, and clunky bank reporting tools. Every single one of these line items represents legacy bloat and custom rules that actively drag out the clock. And right when you think you've successfully navigated all those icebergs, here comes testing. Everyone always underestimates testing because this is the exact moment when human resistance steps right out of the shadows. Just when you think you're ready to go live, someone from accounting looks at the screen, squints, and utters the infamous phrase, "Wait, that's not how we process credit memos." Suddenly, all this tribal knowledge that was never documented rears its head. Operations realizes the warehouse bins don't match reality. Sales starts demanding that their special, one-off pricing logic is absolutely critical. The whole project halts, not because the system broke, but because deeply ingrained human habits are fighting back. This brings us to the core philosophical battle at the heart of this explainer.
On one side, we have the old ERP model. This is exactly what happened to Atlas. It's defined by endless customization, giant committees just recreating old workflows, and bloated approvals. Now, contrast that with the DataOngoing model on the other side. Their approach is radical. Simplify first, standardize aggressively, and completely eliminate duplicate work. The critical trade-off we're talking about here is customization versus standardization. The old way customizes the software to fit a broken business. The new way standardizes the business to fit modern, highly efficient software. And listen, if you refuse to standardize, you fall right into the customization trap. This is where firms spend months meticulously documenting totally broken processes just so they can rebuild those exact same broken processes inside incredibly expensive new software. They're trying to modernize their tech without actually modernizing their operations. It's the classic trap of saying, but that's the way we've always done it. When a company lacks real executive ownership, constantly changes the scope, and relies on custom scripts just to avoid changing human behavior, well, that is exactly how you end up in that 2+ year disaster timeline. Timelines slip, budgets double, morale totally collapses. Let's move on and see how this builds into an actual solution. Here is the actionable acceleration path. Step 1, start with operational truth, not just software features. Step 2, standardize aggressively. Step 3, compress decision-making. Maya, our consultant, noted that if a company stays rigidly disciplined and assigns strong internal leaders, they can absolutely beat the odds. The fastest companies out there, they don't necessarily have the biggest budgets. What they have is discipline. They prioritize simplification for scale over customization for ego. They don't let consulting projects drag on forever. They intentionally compress the time it takes to make firm operational decisions. And if a company truly masters those 3 steps, we arrive at this mind-blowing number: 1 day. I know, it sounds completely impossible, and the CEO from our source material literally almost laughed out loud when he heard it. But it's true. If a company already operates with extreme discipline, meaning they have pristine data, crystal clear ownership, super lean workflows, and highly decisive leadership, consulting firms can deploy a core, functioning NetSuite operational foundation in a single day. Finance, inventory, and reporting go live fast enough for the team to start operating differently immediately. It requires radical, almost painful discipline, but the technology itself, it's absolutely capable of it. So what actually slows companies down? Look at this breakdown. The absolute highest barriers aren't bad code or server latency, not even close. The highest hurdles are indecision, protecting inefficient processes, and a fear of accountability. It's the stubbornness of trying to make a modern lightning-fast system behave exactly like an old, bloated business. When an implementation stretches from 3 months to 18 months, it's rarely a technology limitation. Timelines stretch because of human hesitation. Organizations simply need time to decide just how badly they actually want to become efficient. So the crucial point is this standalone truth. NetSuite doesn't take 18 months. Resistance does. Just take a second to let that sink in. The software is ready to go right now. The delay is entirely rooted in departmental politics, approval bottlenecks, and spreadsheet workarounds that nobody questions because, well, they've just existed forever. This realization changes the entire energy of the boardroom because it forces leadership to finally look in the mirror instead of just blaming the IT department or getting mad at the software vendor. You see, this is no longer a conversation about a software purchase or an IT project timeline. It's a definitive strategic choice about the fundamental identity of your organization. Are you going to choose stagnation, remaining slow, bloated, and constantly reactive? Or are you going to demand agility, becoming fast, lean, and operating in real time? An ERP rollout isn't the finish line, it's the starting line. It is the exact moment a company stops operating like a disjointed collection of bickering departments and finally starts operating like a single, powerful, unified business.
Ultimately, if an ERP implementation is really just a mirror reflecting your company's internal discipline, the question you need to be asking your leadership team isn't, how long does implementation take? The real question is, how fast are we willing to evolve? Are you willing to let go of complexity? Are you willing to eliminate inefficiency rather than fight to preserve it? Think deeply about your own operational discipline, because your answer to this question won't just dictate a software launch. It will dictate the future survival and scale of your business. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep questioning the process, and I'll catch you next time.